But why would anybody need this much acid anyway?
Like, wow.
Ah yes, Scooby-Doo. What would we do without good old Dooby Scoo?
We'd probably panic!
It doesn't matter how old you are, practically everyone you know, young or old, have had experience watching the show. Truth be told, I didn't always stick around to watch the original Where Are You reruns at a young age, but I spent so much time watching a pup named Scooby-Doo, which was a lot more cartoony and expressive than its predecessors, and oftentimes liked to poke fun at them in a zany and celebratory manner. Even if What's New Scooby-Doo was the main incarnation premiering on TV at the time, I guess a pup named Scooby-Doo was so expressive in its animation style that it was enough to keep my attention at such a young age. It was a lot more bouncy and less stiff than the original. I mean, you wouldn't see shit like this in the first series.
Well, Scoob, I guess you made front page news.
But when Scooby-Doo came out, it was something new. It wasn't often an animated show would crossbreed with a mystery genre, especially one for kids. The show taught children problem-solving skills and relied on an ingenious formula that would carry on for at least 50 years now. And all that time since, the creators haven't forgotten what made it great in the first place. And even 25 years after its premiere in 1969, the Scooby-Doo gang would continue their adventures through video games. What started out on consoles like the Intellivision and Commodore 64 eventually met my eyes with the 6th-gen consoles like PS2, GameCube, and Xbox, and in this case, Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights. I first rented this game back when Wegmans had a video rental store, and only old-school East Coasters like me will know what that is. And sad to say, I haven't picked up the game until today, but I have a good feeling about this one, because this game was developed by Heavy Iron Studios, who sure made the Incredibles games, which I've covered in the past, and both I didn't think too highly of. However, Heavy Iron also developed the
Best game ever.
Battle for Bikini Bottom, but that's for another day. So I think it's safe to say that we're in good hands. So let's check it out. Alright, good start. The title screen alone sells me on the game since it looks exactly like the opening title card of an episode of the original series, and the background music is a rendition of the theme to the new Scooby-Doo movies, and that's going to be a constant running theme in this game. All the little homages to the classic series and looking spot on to the show. There's just so many little nuances to appreciate if you're a Scooby-Doo fan, or at least someone like me who grew up watching the series. The style of the game matches a regular spooky setting from the show. There's a laugh track in the background occasionally. Yes, I have to admit that is very amusing, as well as Scooby's running style when he runs on a slippery surface just like the show, the way he slides down a narrow surface, and Don friggin' Knotts. He plays the groundskeeper, as per usual Scooby-Doo character trait, and pops up everywhere to give you gaming tips.
I don't like you. You smell like a wet dog.
How could this happen to me?
They even use the in-game models to recreate the opening to the Where Are You series, and damn, it's pretty spot on. If not a bit dated, but I still appreciate the effort. But hey, before I go any further, let me go over the plot. So as per usual Scooby-Doo adventure, they head over to a spooky haunted mansion to investigate a mystery. In this case, Daphne's old friend Holly Graham, and she explains that her famous inventor uncle, Alexander Graham,
I don't get it.
went missing, and they leave it up to them to solve the case. Also, there aren't any monsters or ghosts on screen yet, but I'm already scared because for some reason Daphne looks less like her usual cute redhead self and more like early 90s Michael Jackson. I mean, if we're going this far, we might as well have Velma with the face of Mick Jagger.
That's disgusting!
Shaggy and Scooby, as per usual, want to sit this one out, and the rest of the gang go in the mansion without them. For some reason, not offering them any Scooby snacks to convince them like usual, but oh well. Speak of the devil, Shaggy finds himself a box hanging on a tree branch, and grabbing it activates a trap, leaving Scooby all alone and scared. And then the game begins. A basic Scooby-Doo setup, and a pretty good one at that. For one, I kinda like the idea of Scooby-Doo having to venture off on his own to solve the mystery, as well as the assumption that the rest of the gang has sprung traps on themselves and leaving it all up to him. Even if Scooby himself isn't really unraveling many clues, he's basically the one pulling teeth and doing all the hard work. The further you go down the line, you come across the gang during boss battles, and slowly they start uncovering the mystery. Ironic since it's mostly implied Shaggy was the one captured, but he keeps showing up in the game to help you through tough spots and such.
This thing's out of control, pal. If you need me, I'll be back at the start. Wahoo!
Okay, Shaggy, I know you're the only one who takes the spookiness of this predicament seriously, but now you're just fucking around, so stop being a Scooby-douche and help him out.
Wahoo!
As for the gameplay, the Mystery Machine acts as the main hub world and functions as a basic third-person platformer as you're free to roam this tiny little area. But when you enter the actual levels, the game switches to a perspective of 2.5 dimensions where everything including Scooby is 3D, but the camera view follows you from the side as you follow a straight path to the end of the level. Occasionally there's a bit more wiggle room where you need to take out an enemy, but otherwise you're walking in a straight line. And I say take out an enemy only a bit loosely because at the start of the game you're given no defenses to yourself, so you have to explore the stages whilst avoiding getting hit by monsters and ghosts. Eventually, near the end of the first few stages, you're given power-ups that at least help you fend off against them, whether it's a charging attack, ground pound, or even a sneak move that you can use to avoid monsters jumping out at you. And the further you go into the game, you'll eventually find power-ups that'll help you collect more items like Scooby Snacks and monster tokens. The Scooby Snacks serve as coins that'll help you to open gateways to more sections of the game, and the monster tokens don't really do much to help you advance, but sometimes you feel satisfied when you went the distance to get them. But there's no real reward to getting a whole 100% completion in this case, so pick your poison, I guess. And you're gonna come across several forks in the road that require certain power-ups that you won't get until later in the game. So the game always has you guessing and wanting to get those power-ups just to traverse the levels again and see what you've been missing. And thankfully, you don't have to survey the whole map multiple times to get to those points, as there's a warp gate every 2 or 3 levels that you have to activate as a shortcut. The gameplay can feel boring when you don't have any power-ups, but once you get the first couple, the gameplay starts getting fun. Good on you, game. Your health is replenished with snack food, and the more you eat, the happier Scooby-Doo gets. When he's low on health, he looks like he just saw the ending to Brokeback Mountain. And when he's fully replenished, he looks like someone just told him the ultimate dad joke, and he's all... If your hands fit perfectly inside a 6th gen controller like mine, you can do a bunch of weird shit that can be mastered with these power-ups. There's a power-up that allows you to jump on enemies' heads and either leave them paralyzed for a few seconds or knock them out. And sometimes if there's a lot of enemies in one place, you'll be able to teabag them all at once while still in the air. I'm sorry, is this Scooby-Doo or Pac-Man World 2? However, some of these power-ups can get on your nerves if you're not too careful. There are parts in the game where Scooby has to swing across chandeliers to reach other items, but the accuracy to grab onto them in a very hard to reach place is exhaustingly precise. Eventually you'll be upgraded to a double jump, and then a double jump and glide. But for some reason you can't grab onto the chandeliers while you're gliding, even if you're so close to it that you're practically phasing through it. So only a basic jump or double jump are allowed for you to be able to grab on, and it's really frustrating, especially in cases where your perception between you and the next platform is off, so in most cases you'll have to take leaps of faith in order just to jump from a few feet in front of you. And sometimes that isn't enough, as occasionally you can swing freely, but other times you're locked onto a certain range and a certain slant, which I can understand because the game is locking you onto the path of what you're supposed to be aiming for, but why deny the player of that sort of range if you're only going to allow it in certain other parts of the game? As if we're not going to know where to throw ourselves? Look, game, I may be an idiot, but I'm not stupid. Plus, free range swinging equals more fun.
Play, mate! Come on and play with me! Now bring a dolly tree! Climb up my apple tree!
And once you get some of these upgrades later in the game, they defeat the purpose of others. Like, you get a sneaking ability to get past offensive enemies, and later get upgraded for greater sneak abilities, though it seems almost pointless since by the time you upgrade it, you'll be able to deal with enemies in more than one way. And I don't know, something about slowing down this game to sneak past an enemy when you can't step 5 feet away without an obstacle you have to time perfectly in order to get by seems kinda pointless, at least until after you learn to attack. But not all the enemies can be dealt in such a way. When you have the charge attack, you can just bash into enemies and they'll go down, but if you're not directly facing them by just a smidge, you'll just run in circles until the attack gives up after a few seconds, and naturally has you end up getting hurt in the first place. And when I got upgraded to the ground pound ability, I ended up using that one more often than not. In the final battle, you have to fight a few Funland robots, and using the ground pound instead of the charge attack actually hurts you since you're fighting an actual robot, which makes sense. But I don't like the idea of Scooby-Doo injuring his butt when he smashes that hard metal.
Why,
I think I broke my ass.
Whilst other enemies like the ghosts can't be harmed at all unless you stun them with bubblegum, trapping them to the floor for a few seconds for you to bounce on their heads to reach a higher level, or encasing them in a bubble for you to use to reach higher ledges without having to bounce off of them. And wow, I've made it this far into the video and I didn't even talk about the main cherry on top of this Scooby-Doo cereal, because
Bring that shit back.
now every villain that you fight in this game is a regular Scooby-Doo villain from the original series, but the main villain behind this whole scheme is a new villain called the Mastermind, and typically I would call him lame and generic if he wasn't voiced by the almighty, scurvy, child-murdering, devil-worshipping, toxic but sweet, sweet, sweet transvestite that is
Tim Curry!
Yes, my friends, Tim Curry plays the Mastermind in this game, and is trying his hand at an American accent.
I'm the reason you're here.
You are?
I'm the one who made Professor Graham disappear.
You did?
I'm also the one who's brought back all of your old foes.
Sadly, I think Tim Curry without his usual accent doesn't allow him to express himself in the way he usually does, but I'd be lying if he said he wasn't so delicious. And this only makes sense because he played Ben Ravencroft in Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, not to mention he's also a longtime Scooby-Doo fan. And here's a fun fact for you. Did you know he was originally going to play the villain in the 2002 live-action movie the year this came out, but he chose not to when he heard Scrappy-Doo, a character he hated, was part of it? Thanks a lot, writer James Gunn, the guy who went on to do nothing but never mind. And when you're waiting for platforms to come closer and you have to jump from one space to another, but one of them could be way out of reach when you're trying not to waste time, you end up taking a leap of faith, but the camera is too zoomed in for you to see what's behind you, but more of what's in front. And that can also be a big issue when going backwards in a level when there's no available warp gate at your disposal. You know, I know it sounds like I'm trashing this game with all of its flaws, but let's be honest, what movie-based games aren't without a lot of flaws? But also, this game isn't really as bad, all things considered. Believe me when I say, out of all the games I've reviewed for this channel so far, this one so far is one of the most fun. But then again, I've barely begun to scratch the surface of the better movie licensed games out there, but this one actually shows it has merit. I don't consider myself a Scooby-Doo video game aficionado, but out of the ones I have seen, this one is practically a spot on to the show with its look, color scheme, music, and dialogue. And even with the game's faults, it's still a lot of fun. However, I will say I was undeniably cheated. Let me explain. So the boss battles in this game are pretty damn easy, everything seems pretty laid out for the player, and it's not really hard at all to figure out the weak points, especially since it's 3 hits and they're done. Aside from Redbeard, that one actually required some thinking that I so wasn't used to playing this game. But the Mastermind fights, ugh, just watch.
Have no doubt, I'm in control.
And this is why I should have played my previously owned GameCube version. Yeah, you saw that right. Right when I thought I won, the game freezes on me and pulls a big middle finger to all my hard work, having to restart it several times. You know, now that I think about it, this literally feels no different than the boss battle in the Rise of the Underminer game. Why does Heavy Iron have to screw me twice? Well, I didn't want to have to do this, but if we're gonna have to see the true ending, I'm gonna have to punch in a cheat code. Okay, this one unlocks all the cutscenes. Ah! Okay. Alright, and here we go. I said, here we go. Here we go. You mean to tell me that the cheat code that can unlock every cutscene in the game can't even show me the ending? I mean, I get the intention behind it to kind of keep you in suspense on who the identity of the Mastermind really is. But what's the point of having a cheat code if it's not gonna do everything it says it does? You know, I thought I could do no wrong with this. I paid specifically $20 for this Xbox copy so I can play it in HD on the Xbox 360, but all my hard work was for naught. It's a sad day for Doobie Scoo. And since the game couldn't have the decency to supply me with the ending with my defective copy, I'll download the ending from the internet, and to those who don't want any spoilers and want to skip to the conclusion, go to this time code and have at ya. So the mastermind is unmasked as Alexander Graham, but quickly reveals that everything was an illusion caused by Holly using Alexander's inventions. She framed her uncle so that she can use his technology to unravel the mystery and claim the credit for herself.
Like, and don't forget the most important clue of all, hologram. Get it? Hologram? Hi, kill me.
Okay, I have to admit that was kinda cute. But thinking about it, that doesn't make any sense. So the gang is already well aware that monsters and ghosts don't exist, and the ones they've encountered were just people in costume. Scooby tells everyone that the monsters he's seen were all real and ones they've dealt with in the past. The fact of them being holograms would make sense in the show since the team practically never came in physical contact with any of them unless they put them through a trap or already deceived that they were projections, and more often than not, they ran away scared. That plausibility does not work in an action platformer because how can Scooby attack all of these monsters at once and still be able to touch them? They don't manifest into physical form, they're still light images. And if this sort of thing can happen throughout the mansion, the docks, hedges, and graveyards, Holly must be working overtime to make sure all of these things come in contact with Scooby-Doo, otherwise it makes no sense. But I will give props that Don Knotts has a sick mic drop moment.
Wait, Fred. Like, I think I know who this guy really is. It's that spooky groundskeeper, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Blame the spooky groundskeeper. Anytime some ghost scares somebody off a well-kept lawn, it's just got to be the groundskeeper. Like we couldn't just put up a sign that says, keep off the grass. Nah, I'll just get myself a big old rubber monster suit.
Also, Alexander Graham is voiced by Tim Conway, an automatic plus in my book.
Oh, thank you, kids. I don't know how to repay you. Will you stop calling me boy?
Rest in heaven, you beautiful son of a bitch. Well, that was certainly a ride, wasn't it? You know, I may have had some real complaints with the gameplay and sometimes broken physics, but that just kinda comes with the package of a movie license game. That doesn't renew its quality, but it's just something I have come to expect since I do videos on them. But it also doesn't diminish the quality of the game because aside from the collecting with no real achievement of 100% completion, it's a really solid Scooby-Doo game. Everything people love about the original run from the 60s to the 80s is superbly represented here, and I recommend it to any Scooby-Doo fan who wants to play the adventures of everyone's favorite mangy mutt. Maybe try the PS2 or GameCube port if you can find it, just for a better chance of avoiding the issue I had with it. It might be just my defective copy, but better safe than sorry. And you know something? I think Scooby-Doo needs a comeback. I mean, sure, it had somewhat of a resurgence 2010, actually 10 years ago, with the darker tone of Mystery Incorporated, as well as a Family Guy clone, and going back to the roots again, and because of the new animated movie coming out, and a fan-made darker toned internet series, but hear me out. If Scooby-Doo can make an appearance the same way Telltale did with Back to the Future or Insomniac with Spider-Man, I think the Mystery Gang deserves a brand new video game adventure, possibly on PS5 and maybe in somewhat of the style crossbreeding Insomniac Spider-Man and the Batman Arkham games. Wouldn't you want to see something like that? I know I would, even more than the last Scoob trailer having a dab and Netflix joke.
Apparently he's been stealing Netflix by using his mother's account.
That is not fair for the rest of us who have to pay for Netflix.
You have to pay for Netflix?